Oh, now you can hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
My dulcet sounds?
Say again?
My dulcet sounds?
Everything is working good.
Oh, okay.
How are you doing today?
We're doing fine. We went for a ride. It was a nice, pleasant day.
Good.
Amazing thing around here, we keep seeing people with gardens. They sell eggs and things and what have you. And the vegetables they grow are humongous. They're even vegetables I never heard of. It's quite amazing.
Are you?
I saw a zucchini. The size of a big watermelon. You know.
Wow. Are you buying them or are you just looking at them?
Well, I'm not buying them. Some things we buy, but there are neighbors that are growing these things, so I have gifts.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
So, how's our group doing? I called Larry. I didn't get him. You know, he's got a problem, Larry. He's taking chemotherapy, so maybe he's not feeling
sorry
well.
to hear that.
Yeah.
Carolyn, is that you?
Hi, Rabbi.
Hi, how are you? Nice to see you.
To see you too. So I may just become a fly on the wall now.
That's perfectly fine. I'm just glad you're here.
Absolutely.
Nice to see you.
And I'm sorry?
Nice to see you.
Yes, you too. And I did a WhatsApp group for us.
I saw that you did.
Okay, so I'm here.
I'll keep my eye on that.
Okay, great. I'm here.
If there's anything, just message me.
Perfect.
So Steve, have you been able to get out much or go for a little walk or go for a little drive or spend some time doing some nice things?
Yeah.
I mean, you have so many outdoor areas by you.
Yeah, we spent the whole day driving around, and it's beautiful. Beautiful. It's not very crowded, and everybody seems to be, you know, mask aware, and there's not too many incidences here, so we feel good.
Good. I think the big wave happened early on in the Seattle area, and I think now there's a better system in place. They figured out how to manage it.
Well, the big thing was in a nursing home outside of Seattle.
Right.
And that was the center of, and yeah, and they've seemed to be doing it pretty well.
Please. Good.
All right.
Maybe, Steve, we should have you do a presentation on aerodynamics.
What in the world do I know about that?
You're a pilot.
I was. All I know is I turn it on and do what they told me, and it goes up. You know.
That's it?
That's it.
I'd
I
be
never
interested,
involved.
I'd be interested in hearing you tell stories about your different plane rides.
Well, some of them you don't want to hear about, but certainly I had some interesting rides. But I don't think it's this kind of sense of being one with your machine and up in the air, and it's a feeling, hard to describe. And
Maybe I should
words
have
don't
you and
seem to do it.
Gal. Gal is another local pilot. Maybe I should have you and Gal do a presentation about planes and flying them and the dangers, the fun, that kind of thing. What do you think?
I'm waiting for the light bulb to go off. I haven't seen it yet.
Okay.
My
I
inner
tried.
night, I don't, I'm not sure. It's been, a while. I had a lot of fun flying. I flew my own experimental plane, and then I flew a biplane, and I flew a thing called a glass air, which is a two-seater with a big engine that goes very fast, and I felt like a fighter pilot. And I don't know, people that fly might be interested, but normally, no, I don't think.
Okay.
Find something else for me to talk about that I might know something about.
Well, I think you know a lot about everything.
Hi, Racy.
How are you, Steve?
I'm good. How are you?
I am good, thank God. It's been a long day.
I hear you were out paddleboarding.
I was not out paddleboarding, but Chayla was out paddleboarding. She loved it. She had a great time. She spent over an hour paddleboarding, and then my brother-in-law was paddleboarding, and Zaman was paddleboarding. But
They all got up and
what?
They all got up. They all were able to stand up.
Zam, did Chayla stand, or was she just on her knees? Was Chayla able to stand up?
A little bit.
A little. Up and down. It was very windy, like so windy. Like we went to Slide Lake and there were literally waves.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, every time it gets exponentially better. So,
Well, we're looking forward to bringing it with us on our RV trip. And I'm sure we'll pass some great waters to be able to take it out on.
that'd be neat. Be nice if we could kind of get together, but there's this virus between us.
Well, you'll let us know. We're coming to your area, hopefully to see you, and maybe do something, 6 feet away outdoors.
Yeah. Well, I've been talking to Zalman, and we're trying to work something out.
Fantastic.
So that would be nice. That'd be
How's
great.
life treating you up near Seattle?
Well, I'm one of the incredibly fortunate ones. I'm in a beautiful place. There's no sense of, it's kind of in a bubble. The people are nice. People are calm. They're obeying the rules. There's not difficult to keep distance. And the weather's been gorgeous, and we're just incredibly lucky.
Amazing.
Consul General, are you here with us? Consul General, can you hear me? I cannot hear you. Consul General Newman, are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
I hear you just fine, and it's wonderful to see you again.
Shalom, shalom.
Shalom to you. We're going to be starting in about, let's call it 5 minutes, 7:30 prompt.
No problem. That gives me time to do a cup of tea.
Go for it.
It's kosher. We're not opening it. We're not opening it.
Hello, Ephraim. Ephraim, are you there?
I am here. I just have it on mute because we've got background noise, but we're doing the dishes. But
I'd love to see your beautiful face at some point. Hello, Kameya.
Hi, Rabbi.
Good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Of course.
How was your day?
It was good. We went on a horseback ride and it's a little sketchy. Lance's horse decided it wasn't going to go any farther, so we had to turn around. But we got back safely, so that's good. It's good.
Incredible. Incredible. Never a dull moment. Hi, Elon. Good to see you. I'd love to see
Yeah.
your face.
Hello, hello, hello.
How's your day been treating you, Elon?
Oh, it's been long. What about you guys?
It's been long and strong.
Good.
We're going to be starting in just a few minutes. Rose, can we just get this on Facebook? We are going live on Facebook. It should be starting shortly.
No.
Okay. Error starting broadcast. Try again. Can we try this one more time, Race? Can you show me how to do this? I'd like to get started on time. It's not working.
Are you signed into the email account? The Facebook account?
Should be. Close it.
No, I think it's better to.
I don't think so. Try one more time.
Let's try again. Let's close this.
We close it. We will be starting in just 1 minute.
So go back to Facebook.
Yeah, see if there's a way that you can. Just takes up bandwidth. It's nice to give more people some time to get on. Thank you everyone so much for joining us. Okay. We're going to stop the live stream on Facebook and we're going to start it up again because it's giving us some technical difficulties and we want to make sure that we have as much participation as possible. Thank you everyone for being here with us. Error starting broadcast. Please try again. What is going on, Race? Okay. We will go live and then we will just post it on Facebook at a later time. Welcome and thank you all so very much for joining us this evening for our Zoom presentation titled A Conversation with Israel's Consul General, Dr. Newman. My name is Rabbi Zalman Mendelson, and I serve as the co-director of the Chabad Jewish Center of Wyoming, together with my dear wife, Razy. For the past 13 years, it has been our great honor and pleasure to bring the beauty, warmth, and depth of Jewish tradition and a love for Israel to our community through a variety of interesting, engaging, thought-provoking events, programs, and services. Tonight, we have the great honor and pleasure to host Israel's Consul General, Dr. Newman, for a fascinating discussion on so many of the interesting, timely, and important things that have been going on in Israel over the last several months and several days. What I like to describe this as is a briefing, an insider's view as to what is going on in Israel, to include the brand new agreement between Israel and the United Arab Emirates, which was confirmed today to normalize relationships between the two countries, to include the situation in Lebanon as it relates to the most recent tragic event that took place in Beirut, and the border as well with Syria, the challenges posed by Iran, the new embassy in Jerusalem, COVID-19, and so much more. During the first 15 minutes of the program tonight, Dr. Newman will be sharing with us a 15-minute brief on the current situation, and I encourage each and every one of you to write in questions into the chat box that we will ask to Dr. Hillel Newman during the following Q&A that will happen after the 15-minute brief. Just one housekeeping item before we get started. We have a very important upcoming event which will take place on September 6th at 9:45 a.m. Mountain Time, where we will have the opportunity to meet the first woman Haredi minister in Israel, Omer Yankelevich, who will share her story of growing up as a secular Jew in Israel, moving on to engage with her family in religious observance as a child, going on to become a lawyer clerking for important judges in Israel's courts, finally launching an organization that helped bring together disparate groups in Israel who were often polarized and separated by bringing unifying events where they had common ground, and most recently becoming a member of Knesset and the first Israeli Haredi woman minister in the history of the country. Please join us for that on September 6th at 9:45 a.m. and look out for the marketing material. Dr. Hillel Newman assumed the post of Consul General of Israel in July of 2019, where he serves as the senior representative of Israel to the Pacific Southwest. During his 20-year diplomatic service, Consul General Newman accumulated vast experience in policy formulation and decision-making, at the highest levels of Israel's foreign policy establishment. He has served in several influential and critical positions, including policy advisor to 3 foreign ministers of Israel and ambassador of Israel to Tajikistan and Uzbekistan, 2 Muslim countries. Before he joined the diplomatic service, he attained a PhD in Jewish history and served as a professor of Jewish history, teaching graduate courses at Bar-Ilan University and Boston University. He has authored and published a book on Jewish sectarianism during the Hellenistic and Roman periods. For the past 5 years, he has also served as a key lecturer on Judaism in the NATO Defense College. Most recently, Consul General Newman served in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs as both Special Policy Advisor to Director General and as Director of the World Jewish Affairs Department. He has been intimately involved in the most current and pressing issues confronting global Jewry and Israel. Previously, Consul General Newman served also in the strategic division of the ministry, playing a key role in coordinating efforts related to strategic threats facing Israel. As ambassador to the republics of Uzbekistan and Tajikistan, both Muslim countries, he promoted political, business, and security ties with these countries. He also initiated several projects and agreements in the fields of medicine, education, agriculture, and humanitarian aid, something that Israel is very well known for and something that we all celebrate. Consul General Newman first became familiar with the United States while serving as Deputy Consul General in Boston to the New England region between 2001 and 2005. He engaged in diverse public diplomacy efforts, conducted briefings on political and security issues, took a special interest in building interfaith and inter-ethnic relations. Consul General Newman made Aliyah with his family from South Africa, served as a medic in the IDF, and is married to Ayala. The couple has a 10-year-old son, Ram. His favorite hobbies are reading, nature tours, sporting events, and scuba diving. Before we warmly welcome Dr. Hillel Newman to the Chabad here in Wyoming, I would also like to note that not part of his bio, he has been intimately involved in conversations and discussions with the United Arab Emirates and has recently been there for a visit. His insight into this current peace negotiated settlement between the 2 countries is uniquely important for our community to hear about, and we warmly welcome Dr. Hillel Newman to our Chabad. Please put your hands together for Consul General Newman.
Thank you.
Consul General, please, the floor is all yours. Share with us an update on all of the important things that are going on in Israel.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi Mendelssohn. Thank you, Rabbanit Reizi. It is my pleasure and honor to be on your program. I have a warm place in my heart for Chabad in general. I've worked with Chabad in many different junctions of my life. And I commend and salute the activity of Chabad, which brings the Jewish values close to heart and close to home of many people around the world, doing wonderful work. I collaborated with Chabad in Uzbekistan, for instance, bringing matzot for Passover, bringing wine for Passover, and taking care of the needs of the Jewish community in many ways. I think that there's one thing special about Chabad is that the Israelis have connected with Chabad in a very special way. And they understand that Chabad is a second home for them around the world. And it's amazing to see Israelis who are totally secular, no connection with religion, don't ever go to a synagogue. But when they travel abroad and it comes Passover or Rosh Hashanah or whatever, they look for the Chabad synagogue in order to join the community. So that just shows how Chabad is penetrated into the hearts of the Israelis. And I commend your activity in Wyoming, and I'll be very glad to visit one day when we can and partake in the community's activities physically, as they say. Okay, we'll start off with a brief overview, let's say, of the different issues that are on our table. I'd just like to add that I think, Rabbi Mendelssohn, you must be a prophet, because we set this Zoom conference a few weeks ago, And obviously you knew that the UAE agreement would come through on this day because I'm now inundated with calls and requests for Zoom conversations and whatever, but I said Wyoming is booked. So you obviously knew in your wisdom that it would come, or something would come.
In real estate, it's all about location. In politics, it's all about timing.
Right. Right. So let's start off. Of course, I'll start off with the burning issue of UAE, just to give a little bit of insight, but we can talk about all the issues that you mentioned, and whatever people will ask about, I'll be glad to answer. Every question is legitimate. Okay. Of course, the burning news that we've heard of this today is the agreement with UAE. And as Rabbi Mendelsohn mentioned, I had the privilege of partaking in meetings. I traveled with our foreign minister, Israel Katz, and we visited the UAE about a year and a half ago. That was a few months before I commenced my position in Los Angeles. We met with the leadership of UAE, and that was part of an ongoing process in order to bring the relations closer and friendlier in order to reach this day, and the day of a declaration of assuming relations, full, open, candid relations between Israel and one of the Persian Gulf countries. This is a tremendous development. Let me just say that I think it's a manifestation or a proof of the fact that from Israel's establishment, all we've aspired to is, of course, peace with all our neighbors. And the only thing that held us back, the obstacle, was the lack of willingness of the Arab and Muslim states to recognize the existence of the state of Israel. When Israel was established, we extended our hand in peace to all our neighbors, including the Palestinians and including all the Arab and Muslim states. We have no problem recognizing any Arab and Muslim state. And they had a problem with us. And then they had the Khartoum Convention with the 3 no's, what's called the 3 negatives, which was no recognition of Israel, no talks with Israel, etc. Since then, we've gone the vector positive. We've managed to arrange a peace treaties with Egypt, with Jordan. We have understandings with the Palestinians. And now, today, we have the declared understandings with UAE. And that's a wonderful development. We hope that many other Arab and Muslim states will follow suit and will come and join the wagon of peace. But this should also be a manifestation of the fact that it's not territories, it's not water, it's not, none of those issues are the core issue of the conflict in the Middle East. The core issue is, are they prepared to accept Israel? Once an Arab or a Muslim state comes forward and says, we're prepared to live in peace with Israel, then we have peaceful relations. The problem is not on Israel's side. The problem is on their side. And it's the same for the Palestinians. We have come to understandings with the Palestinians and could have gone forward to full peaceful relations, but the rejectionism of the Palestinians has been the greatest obstacle. I'll just say about UAE that, of course, it's an upcoming and powerful country in the Persian Gulf. If you just look at their activities of the past month, they launched a spacecraft, and they've inaugurated a nuclear plant, and they've also established peace with Israel. That just shows their centrality in the region. And the reason that they've come forward is because they understand that Israel is not an enemy, but an ally. They can get many benefits from Israel. Many people have grown up in the Arab world in indoctrination of Israel as an enemy. And when they grow up and they see the reality, and they see that Israel is extending its hand in peace, and they can get benefits from Israel, and we see eye to eye on many, many issues of the geopolitical situation in the Middle East, then we hope that all will follow the UAE and establish full diplomatic relations with Israel. The UAE has understood that in the fight against Iranian malign activity, that Israel is an ally. In their aspiration for technology, for modern technology, artificial intelligence, which they need, and they want to collaborate with Israel, then Israel is an ally. When they look at Turkey and they look at other countries in the region, and they fight against radical Islam, the Muslim Brotherhood. They know that Israel is an ally. So all of these things put together show us also, also a ray of light for all of us to understand that there can be a new Middle East. There can be a Middle East of recognition, mutual recognition, understanding, and working together and collaborating. We don't rush to say it's a new Middle East because we've had this illusion in the past, but we do hope that the developments with UAE will bring about further progress in this issue. Any questions on this issue, of course, I'll be glad to take later. I just should commend, of course, the Crown Prince, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, who's termed MBZ, in contrast to MBS of Saudi Arabia. And MBZ has proved himself to be a true partner. And of course, the American administration, President Trump, and of course, the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, who have worked together closely on this issue for a long time in order to bring about positive results. I think that we should salute and give praise when it's worthy. Lebanon. Let's talk about other issues on the Middle East. Unfortunately, not everything is so positive in the Middle East. And we also have to talk about the challenges and struggles that we have. So there are a lot of radical elements out there in the Middle East, mainly supported by Iran. Iran is like the root of all the evils that you can find in the Middle East, whether it's the supporting of terrorism, whether it's supporting of these proxy groups like Hezbollah, Hamas, and others, promoting this rejectionism. They support the Palestinians in their rejectionism. They don't support the Palestinians in peace with Israel. They support the Hamas for attacks against Israel. They support Hezbollah for attacks against Israel, and so on. And they've increased their influence from Tehran all the way down to Damascus, what we call a crescent of Shiite influence. And Iran has succeeded in that aspect. We should always remember that in the context of Iran, it's not only the nuclear issue. And the nuclear issue is, of course, of great concern, because if Iran had nuclear capability and warheads, then oy vavoy, as they would say. But Iran is more than that. Iran is terrorism, Iran is state-sponsored terrorism, Iran is missile development, the development of precise missiles which can hit out not only at Israel, but Europe and United States. So we had to develop, of course, the Iron Dome and all the protection systems because of especially Iranian influence. And one of those influences is the Hezbollah in Lebanon. And we've just seen the devastation caused by the explosions in the port of Lebanon in Beirut. And it's clear to everyone that if there was no Hezbollah and there were no Hezbollah missiles and there were no Hezbollah rockets, no Hezbollah explosives, then such a thing would not take place. The Hezbollah is trying to deny its involvement, but it's clear we've been following, of course, Hezbollah activity, and Hezbollah is a key factor in the smuggling of arms, in the bringing in of arms, and then dispersing and forwarding these arms to all kinds of proxy radical organizations. Part of that is also Syria, which we'll address soon. So in the Lebanon context, I just want to mention that Israel has extended its hand in peace with Lebanon and has also called and offered assistance in the context of the explosions in Beirut. And this is also a sign of the fact that Israel is not an enemy. Israel can be of benefit. But unfortunately, the Hezbollah is sitting there, and it's not only a proxy group of Iran. It has no interest in the benefit of the citizens of Lebanon. It's serving the interests of its mothership, and its mothership is Iran. And they're serving those interests, nothing to do with the benefit of the citizens of Lebanon. And unfortunately, the citizens of Lebanon are like hostages. They've been taken hostage by an armed militia. And this armed militia takes part in the elections in Lebanon and gets voted into positions. And they've gathered this power of fear. It's a power inspired by fear. And they've taken over these power-playing forces. And they're now a decisive factor in Lebanon. But we're hopeful that the people of Lebanon slowly will understand. They are starting to understand. And anyone who's followed the social media noted that there were many people in Lebanon who called for the end of the corruption and the end of the Hezbollah control in Lebanon and the end of the militias of the Hezbollah in Lebanon. Unfortunately, they don't have the power. the people in such states, in such regimes, don't have the power. And the power is ruled by the gun, by fear. So it will take time for things to really change in Lebanon. But we have in the past, if anyone knows the history, then we were on the brink of a peace agreement with Lebanon a few years ago, before the Lebanon wars. And the leader of Lebanon, Bashar Gemayel, who was supposed to sign peace with Israel, was assassinated due to his intention. One of the reasons was his intention to make peace with Israel. So we have these radical elements, and these radical elements are also the Hamas in Gaza Strip. And whenever people talk about what about peace with Israel and the Palestinians, they should understand that the Palestinians are split between the Hamas and between the Fatah, where the Hamas doesn't recognize Israel, doesn't want to recognize Israel, is in favor of any peace deal with Israel, supports terrorism, doesn't even go along with the Palestinian Authority. So when you talk about peace, who is your partner? Is your partner the Hamas or is your partner the Fatah? And even with the Fatah, of course, it's unclear where they stand. And the Hamas took over Gaza forcefully, and so we have a situation with our southern border as well. The new development is Syria. Syria has come under the influence of Iran due to Assad's weakness and the civil war that took place in Syria. Assad lost control really, and he needed the help of foreign powers to get back control of Syria. And one of these foreign powers that rushed to give him assistance was Iran, with the clear intention of taking over and making Syria into like a kind of a puppet regime, like they tried to do in many places around the world. Today, Assad is very much dependent on Iran, and therefore Iran has a strong say in what goes on in Syria. Iran is trying to entrench itself and build footholds in Syria with the main intention of disarray and then attacking Israel, of course. Israel warned a few times against this even before it happened. And when Syria was assisted by Iran, then we again warned that they should not allow permanent presence of Iranian militia or militias controlled by Iran in Syria. Of course, this did not happen, and the militias remained, and they're entrenching themselves. So Israel then declared that we will not allow any military entrenchment of Iran in Syria, and we occasionally act in order to prevent such developments. The hot area is, of course, the Golan Heights, where the Syrian Golan Heights, where radicals have now penetrated on trying to entrench themselves, and Israel acts in order to prevent that entrenchment. So as you can see, Israel is surrounded by radical elements, whether it's the northern border with Lebanon, whether it's the eastern border with Syria, and the southern border with the Hamas. But we manage these struggles and we go on. The aspiration for peace, of course, still remains. Lastly, I'll just mention about COVID-19 and Corona in Israel. I'd just like to mention that there are 4 things that were quite unique about Israel's approach to Corona. Of course, we suffer like every country in the world, and our economy has taken a hit. But we have set up a national emergency unity government, which is one of its kind. I don't think there's another country in the world that it's like Democrats and Republicans coming together in order to create a government to address the urgent situation. And this national unity government, which now enjoys a majority of 72 members of parliament out of 120, one of the largest governments in the history of Israel, also, of course, presents a large and wide support in the state of Israel. When you have Netanyahu on the right and Gantz, center-left, coming together and serving together in the same government, it has also a strong message of unity in attacking, in reaching out to address the challenges. The challenges, of course, are especially the health issue and the economic issue. Another unique thing about Israel was the high-tech approach, which was adopted by Israel. And very quickly, we moved from being needy and being in a situation where we had to purchase all the PPEs and everything. We managed very quickly to start produce ourselves, go into self-producing. And we now produce with the technology, modern technology that we have. We produce for all our needs, and we also even give to others. That's humanitarian aspect that Rabbi Mendelsohn mentioned earlier. We're very heavily involved in humanitarian aid to different countries around the world in connection to COVID-19. And I think that Israel will be one of the leaders in the technological breakthroughs that we will expect in the future. AI is the future due to coronavirus, even more so because of coronavirus, and Israel will be a leading factor in that aspect. Lastly, I'll just say that the political situation in Israel, of course, is that we have this national unity government working together on these different issues, different challenges, whether they be strategic, whether they be health and economy. But we have a national unity government. It's not totally stable. It's a mix of two big parties that came together. Then there are differences between the parties. There are big gaps also between Netanyahu and Gantz. There is always the possibility that things will break through and we'll have to go to elect, that things will break and that we'll have to go again for elections. The polls in Israel are quite clear right now that actually the right bloc under Netanyahu would have a majority if we went for elections. That can change. There's a lot of fluctuation. But Netanyahu, even though if he went for elections, he would have a majority who could make his own coalition without Gantz. He said that the need of the time is to have a national unity government and work together. So they are trying to bridge their differences, and so far they're managing to work together in order to address the different challenges. That's an overview of the different issues. I'll be glad to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Consul General Newman, for that fantastic, clear, concise overview and brief of all of the dynamic, moving situations that are going on in Israel. We are going to go to questions now, and I see that Kameya asked the first question. Kameya, come on mic and ask the question to Dr. Newman yourself, Consul General Newman.
Dr. Newman, Consul General, thank you so much for being with us, taking the time to give us the updates. It's nice to hear some positive coming out of Israel right now. I'm about ready to give up Twitter. I can't handle it anymore. We know that there's going to be incredible pushback. I've already read articles about other Arab countries and their reactions to the normalization of ties between the UAE and Israel. I'm wondering what pushback you're expecting, if there's going to be higher security in certain areas, what the UAE is saying that they're going to do, because they're going to get incredible pushback as well. And then I know you said that you hope that it will normalize relations with other countries. I'm wondering how realistic you think that is, and if so, what other countries you think Israel will have a good chance with normalizing relations with. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamaya, for your question.
Before we get to the answer, I apologize. Before we get to the answer of that fantastic question, I do want to mention, I had intended to mention earlier, and I just skipped that part of the notes for some reason. I didn't see it. Tonight's tonight's virtual gathering is Le'ilui Nishmat Chaim Ben Rudolph, the father of Kameya, who recently passed away, and we wish his soul a peaceful, tranquil place in Olam Haba, together with God, in a everlasting place of peace and tranquility. With regards to the pushback, Dr. Newman.
Thank you. Thank you, Kamaya, for your question. Let me start off with the negative and positive. Please, Kamaya, don't believe all the negative stuff that you see out there. I want to tell you that there's so much to be optimistic about, and there's so much positive. And for some reason, there are some who just, engage in this negativity. And there's no reason. If you look at Israel and the Jewish world, if I take Israel, I'm representing Israel, so let me talk about Israel. Israel is a strong country, developed in its 70 plus years. It has developed so much. It's leading the world in technology, an inspiration for many countries around the world, although we're so small. And look at the peace vector. The peace vector is so positive. The beginning of the establishment of Israel in 1948, the entire Arab and Muslim world were totally rejecting the existence of the state of Israel. Today, we're in a situation where we have full diplomatic relations with Egypt and Jordan. We have understandings with the Palestinians, and we have very deep understandings with many countries Arab and Muslim countries, even though they don't have diplomatic relations with Israel. So of course there are some who still choose to be on the rejectionist side and a radical side. We're not waiting for them, and we shouldn't be held hostage by them. We should just move forward. And the moment we move forward, others will join. That's what has happened with UAE. They see how Israel is developing, how Israel, they have so much to get from Israel, so many benefits in technology, in production, in whatever, facing the enemies that we both have. So there's so much to get from Israel, and there's a lot of positive out there. That's the first thing. Pushback, look, I wouldn't take anything that seriously. You know, when the United States decided to move the embassy to Jerusalem, they said, well, there'll be chaos in the Middle East, and you'll have unrest, and you'll have attacks against the US and Israel, and you'll have total violence. Nothing of that happened. Nothing of that happened. And when they spoke about other things, you know, in the peace process context, and you should understand that there's a lot of people out there spreading negativity and spreading all kinds of theories. But believe me, the United States and Israel, we work closely together and we work wisely. We don't do things in a rush. We don't do things. This process with UAE has been going on for years. And we're very careful and cautious. And the only real reason, I mean, there's no hesitation on Israel's part from the beginning. Since 1948, we've been wanting this situation. The hesitation is only on the side of our partners, and we wait for them, and they bide the time, and they feel that it's right. When they feel it's right, we're ready. We're standing ready. Security concerns in this context, I don't see serious security concerns. I believe that there will be other countries that will join. I can't name them because we're not supposed to speak on their behalf, and I cannot speak on their behalf. I do know who is in line, more or less. As I said, I visited myself UAE with the foreign minister, and we were very well aware of what's going on in the Persian Gulf. We know their interests, and I'm quite confident that there will be other countries that will join, countries that do not have diplomatic relations right now. They will come, whether it's in a month, whether it's in a year, that's up to them. You know, for years, they were also held hostage by the Palestinian issue. And everyone thought that without the Palestinian issue being solved, they'll never make peace. But these countries understood that they're being held hostage by this Palestinian rejectionism. There is no intention of coming to terms with Israel. You know, the Palestinians could have had a state long time ago. In 1948, they could have had a state. And there were three options on the table with different prime ministers of Israel, whether it's Ehud Olmert and Barak, and they rejected every offer that was put on the table. So we shouldn't also be surprised if they reject the current offer that's on the table by the current administration. They've got a tendency of rejectionism. And with their rejectionism, we answer with positivity, and we answer with realism, and we move forward. That's the main, I think, message and the main answer to your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that excellent question and beautiful answer. I love the positivity. Chabad, the Jewish people, and Israel, always staying positive. I believe it's my father who asked this next question. Tati, can you please come on mic to ask your question directly to Consul General Newman?
Yes, it's a great honor to hear from someone of your stature, sir. Many people feel that if I see something on the internet, that means that it's true, but it's really great to hear from someone that really knows what's happening. Additionally, everyone seems to feel that two Jews, there are three opinions. Thank God, Ashreinu Matov Chalkenu, how fortunate we are that Israel has real unity, and there's always something's good. It could always be better, but it's with God's help. It's going to it's going to grow the unity. And then we see other places, Americas, there's total polarization.
Ask your question.
I wanted to ask is everything comes with a price. Everything in life and in politics is quid quo pro, which has become a popular word. Does the peace with the UAE come with, let's say, limitations of Israeli sovereignty over, the Holy Land, which was given by God to the holy people? Does that come with limitations of which you may speak, or is it a win-win situation? Or?
Thank you. Thank you for your question. And it's a great kavod for me. If you're the father of Rabbi Mendelssohn, that's a great kavod for me that you're participating, and thank you for your question. Yes, of course, as you mentioned, 2 Jews, 3 opinions. That's always been the characteristic of Jews and Israel. They have such a tolerance in Israel for differences of opinion, from the far left to the far right. Everyone enjoys freedom of speech and liberty in Israel, and that we're proud of that. Some people come to preach Israel about human rights and about other aspects, and Israel is a shining beacon of example for everyone. So in that aspect, as you said, it's true. We have this dualism. On the one hand, so many opinions and contrasting opinions. On the other hand, we now have unity. The unity is a political unity. How long it will last, I'm not sure. I cannot tell you that it will last. There's a bit of instability in the differences of opinion between the 2 big parties. I mean, just imagine the Democrats and Republicans coming together and trying to hold it together for long. So we're trying to hold it, but I'm not sure. Even if it falls apart and we go to elections again, there's still a unity in the people of Israel on the main issues that unite us, whether it's the challenges which face us. I mean, there are hardly any differences between Netanyahu and Gantz on the key issues. If you look at the geopolitical situation and terrorism and Iran and Hamas and Hezbollah, there are no differences between Netanyahu and Gantz, nothing. So on the main issues that face the people of Israel, there is a wide consensus and support. We're happy about that. It doesn't mean that there are no differences of opinion. Of course there are. Regarding a price we pay, I tell you, Netanyahu did want to go forward with the extending of sovereignty, and he did decide, together with the administration, that he will hold back. In other words, it's like temporary suspended. It doesn't mean that it won't come back in the future. It might. We still reserve the right, as one would say, to extend sovereignty, but we always said that it will be done in full coordination with the American administration. It will be done in a cautious manner, and the idea was to bring a bit of realism to this peace process. Because up to now, the peace process, they called it a peace process. But what it was actually was Israel giving up pieces of land for nothing. And the idea was, at least if you give land, then you want to get peace in retaliation. But we received rockets, we received suicide attacks. We never received the peace that this paradigm promised. So the paradigm of territories for peace has failed. Now Netanyahu gave a press conference today in Israel, earlier, and he said, at last, we are bringing to the table peace for peace. Not anymore territories for peace, mutual recognition. We want our partners for peace to want the peace just as much as we do. And when they do, then we'll have peace. So we don't have to give benefits. We don't have to give, extra bonuses and prizes in order for people to want peace with us. We should reach a situation that people want peace as much as we do. It was Golda Meir and others who said that the day that our Arab and Muslim neighbors will love their children more than they hate the people of Israel, we'll have peace. So that's the true answer to this paradigm. At the same time, we recognize that there are Palestinian people living there. We don't want to rule their lives. So therefore, we are in favor of some kind of understanding that they have their full autonomy, full independence in one way or another. But we need a partner for that, and we'll wait for the time for a partner to come. My answer to you is that the sovereignty extension is being suspended. We still feel as Israel that we have the right to extend sovereignty, but we will do it only in a cautious manner, in cooperation and coordination with the American administration, whichever administration is in power.
Thank you very much for that question and answer. Saul Silverstein had a question. If you can come on and ask your question. If I don't get more questions in the chat box, I will be going to questions that are received via email in the days leading up to this event. We had put in an email address for any questions that people have, but I would prefer to ask questions from people live. So if you have a question, now's your time to send it into the chat box so we can call upon you. Please go ahead, Saul.
Given the issues that have just transpired in Lebanon, there's no longer a functional government. Who is there to negotiate with in Lebanon, and how will Israel proceed?
Thank you. Yeah, Lebanon is a mess. Lebanon is in chaos. The prime minister, of course, as you most probably know, resigned. We're waiting, but they do have their process and their procedure of setting up a new government. It's up to them. We don't delve into domestic politics of any other country. We have no interest in that. It's up to the Lebanese people to decide their future, who their leaders are. They have to decide between the options they have. Unfortunately, Hezbollah is an option. And Hezbollah is an armed militia. So in normal election procedures, such an organization would be disqualified. I mean, you would never, in a normal country, a Western valued country or a country of values, you would not have a militia running for elections while they're armed to their teeth and they come to ballot boxes with machine guns. So it's an abnormal reality in Lebanon. And I think that the majority of the people do not want Hezbollah anymore, and they understand the risk and the threat of Hezbollah. But that's not us to make those decisions. It's their decision. It's their, if the people, it's not also for us to sell, you should uprise and work against the Hezbollah because it's a life-threatening situation. It's just like in Iran. I think the majority of people in Iran would not want this regime anymore in power. But we cannot call for people to risk their own lives because any attempt to topple the regime from inside will be met with cruelty, will be met with cruel, violent response. Because the armed forces are loyal to the regime, they're not loyal to the people. If you notice that in Egypt, the change took over very easily because the armed forces were more loyal to the people than to the regime. And that's what brought about the fact that Morsi was toppled in the end and Assisi became the president. But in these regimes like Iran and Lebanon today, the forces, the armed forces, are loyal to the regime and not to the people. So the regime can be cruel, the regime can abuse the people, the regime can abuse the human rights, but nothing will happen because the armed militia and the armed forces are with the regime. So all we can say is we can express our sympathy with the people of Lebanon who are held hostage by such an organization, the Hezbollah, which is a proxy of Iran. And we hope for the day that the people themselves will find the courage, the force, the ability to bring about new lives and a new future for themselves. They will always find Israel standing ready to have peaceful relations and work together for the benefit of the entire Middle East. What will actually happen politically is up to them to decide. We don't get into those internal political aspects. We just say that Hezbollah should be taken out of the equation. And unfortunately, that's not happening.
Thank you very much for that great question, Saul. And that the simple answer is, as the Consul General began, it's a mess in Lebanon. We have a question that came in from Andy Moskowitz. Andy, go ahead and ask your question live, and then we'll try to get to some more questions. If someone has a second question, we'll get to those questions at the end once we've had a chance to hear from everyone who had a first time around. We will stop this event promptly at 8:30 and invite for those of you who would like to stick around, including the Consul General, for continued dialogue to stick around, but the event will formally be over at 8:30. Go ahead, Andy.
I'm sorry, but I can't. I have a radio interview starting at 7:35 our time, which is 8:35 your time. It was timed according to your Zoom.
Andy.
Yes, thank you, Consul General. I'm always confused when I read about Qatar. I assume they're still under blockade by Saudi and the United Arab Emirates. I know they support Hamas. I don't know how to characterize. I know they're an influential country. What is Israel's connection to them, if any, and how do you characterize their fundamental approach in the Middle East? It's just a mystery to me.
Yeah, well, Qatar, of course, is an important country. And Qatar has also a dialect, an internal dialect. On the one hand, it tries to promote itself, its image, as a country that is coming towards the Western values and coming towards the Western world. And for instance, the media communication systems that they set up as if, to promote more freedom of opinion and freedom of expression. But of course, there are other things going on in Qatar which are not totally in line with that. And Qatar's support of more radical elements or connections with radical elements is of concern. So Qatar is playing a double game. As you said, Qatar is under a blockade, which actually UAE is one of the key partners in the blockade against Qatar. It's an internal issue. It's also connected to global politics. It's also connected to Iran and radical elements in the world, Qatar's connections with radical elements in the world. And we, of course, we don't take a side with one against the other. We're not part of the Persian Gulf. We're not part of these coalitions. We look at things very realistically. And we say, if Qatar is doing something which is good, we should praise Qatar. If Qatar is doing something bad or negative, we should raise this issue and call upon Qatar to change its behavior. So in the aspect of connections to terrorism and support of radical elements, we call upon Qatar very clearly to stop all these contacts, to resume their role as a productive partner. And we also call upon Qatar to be a partner in peace with Israel in the future. We used to have an office in Qatar, an official office in Qatar, and we had representatives in Qatar of Israel. But these countries, they go through ups and downs, and if something happens, then all of a sudden they disconnect from Israel. So there is potential always of renewing the contacts with Qatar. And I wouldn't be surprised if in the far future, Qatar will be a full partner with Israel. It will take longer than other countries.
Thank you very much for that interesting question. It was totally off my radar, but a great question regardless. Rhoda Agan, please go ahead, ask your question. Come on, Mike.
Sure, thank you. Kol hakavod in this new relationship with United Arab Emirates. First of all, it's the hottest game in town in the Middle East in terms of prosperity, success, progressiveness. So it's really a coup. I'm really so pleased about it, but at the same time, my contacts in Israel are so concerned with the condition of the political situation. It's really distracting from the wonderful success that we're talking about today. The protests, the demonstrations, Bibi's level of respect and regard on the Israeli street has really fallen significantly. Although I may happen to agree with many of his policies, his behavior and the questions politically and judicially cause me great concern. What's your take on that? Assuming he didn't appoint you to the position that you're in currently.
Thank you for your question. Now, I'm a professional appointment, which means I was appointed by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I'm a professional of our State Department, what you would call the State Department. So I'm a professional position, and in the past, LA was a political appointment directly by the Prime Minister. In my case, it was a professional appointment, which has differences in the aspect that I'll be here for 4 years and not 2 years. Political appointment is 2 years usually, or even less. So I feel that I can speak freely about Netanyahu, but I do have, of course, my own political opinions, which I don't reveal. They say a successful diplomat is one that when he finishes mission, no one really knows what his political views are. So, but I do represent the government of Israel. And in this case, it's a unity government. So I also represent a wide consensus of a broad span of opinion and support. In the past, I represented the government under Netanyahu. Now I represent a government under Netanyahu and Gantz. That's our job as professional diplomats. Of course, I can also mention that if there was a prime minister that I could not agree with his policy and could not live with his policy, then I would resign. So you can understand from that I do understand the policy of the government and I identify with it. Regarding political distraction and look, you know, that's part of the freedom of expression in Israel. People can demonstrate and they can make a noise and they can call Netanyahu, our prime minister, the most rotten names that they want, and they're not arrested, and they can speak freely and they can demonstrate as long as they get a permit. They get the permit and they can demonstrate. Can you imagine such a reality in one of the Middle Eastern countries that surround us? Can you imagine reality? In Lebanon, it's starting now, but they have so many problems that they just can't deal with it. So there have been demonstrations. But can you imagine a reality where people would stand in the center of Damascus or Tehran and call out against the government and say that the government is a traitor and the government is corrupt and whatever? And there'll be very serious ramifications. Now, they say in these countries there's freedom of expression, but there's no freedom after the expression. So people can voice their opinion, but once they voice it, they're under threat. That's not the situation in Israel. So in Israel, there's freedom of expression. But if you look at the elections have come and gone, and Netanyahu has won. He had the majority, even in a case where everyone thought the odds were against him. It looked like, you know, the judicial process that was going on against Netanyahu and the problems and the challenges and the Iran and the coronavirus, everything. But in the end, Gantz could not make a government without Netanyahu. So with everything that was going on, in the end, Netanyahu was the largest party and he still had the majority, and he was the one that could make the government, whereas Gantz could not make the government. So I think that should be also an understanding that these cries against Netanyahu, that's the political process. People are entitled to their opinion, but that's not the wide consensus in Israel. The wide consensus in Israel is that there is support of Netanyahu. And if you ask why is there support of Netanyahu? First of all, he's done tremendous things for the country. He's a global leader. He's recognized by the entire global community as one of the most influential leaders in the world today. He's one of those leaders that enjoys a wonderful relationship, not only with President Trump, but with President Putin on the other side, and with China in the middle, and look at the things that are moving forward in the Arab and Muslim world under his leadership. So there is recognition of this in Israel. I just like to say about the judicial process. You should always remember that people are innocent until proven guilty, not the opposite. So it's just like anybody else in the country. Netanyahu should also be entitled to the presumption of innocence. Now the problem is that if you would say that a prime minister has to resign the moment an indictment is issued against him, the result would be that a clerk in the prosecution's office can topple the prime minister, because the clerk just needs to put in an indictment, whether it's has a basis, doesn't have a basis. He just needs to put in an indictment, and the prime minister has to resign. The result is that you have 3 or 4 people that can topple a prime minister who was elected by millions of people. So I certainly also identify with this, that you cannot be in a situation where an indictment topples a prime minister. So the indictment must go through courts, must go through trial, and only if the result, the final verdict, is guilty, that's the time that you can start thinking about, okay, a guilty prime minister cannot serve as prime minister. But until then, he must be presumed innocent.
I believe we have time for one last question. And Kameya, you had another question that you wanted to ask. Please go ahead.
Thank you. This question is about Jordan, and I know that we have a peace treaty with Jordan and supposedly full diplomatic relations. My question is, one of the big issues right now is that Jordan is still harboring the mastermind of the Sbarro bombing, and despite the fact that America has also been involved trying to ask for her to be extradited because she killed American citizens, and Jordan is refusing to do that. She's actually a hero in Jordan. I was just wondering if, and I know that this has been brought up by the Israeli parents of the couple of the women that were killed there. What if any progress has been made? What does Israel stand on it? Are you allowed to tell me if there's any progress being made? That's basically my question.
Thank you. Look, the relations with Jordan are very sensitive. You know, we've had a special relationship with Jordan even before we had a peace treaty with Jordan. In fact, it was Jordan that warned Israel about the Yom Kippur War before it happened. So Jordan has a very special relationship with Israel. And Jordan is also a very sensitive country because 60% are Palestinian. And we have an interest in the existence and the prolonged existence of the Hashemite kingdom in Jordan, because it is a friendly regime towards Israel. Of course, nothing is perfect, and it's far from perfect. We would wish for a more warm peace. The same goes for Egypt. We have a very cold peace. And both in Egypt and Jordan, although we signed peace treaties and we have full diplomatic relations, they do not educate the younger generation an environment of peaceful relations, of love your neighbor. So a new generation is still growing up with, sometimes with hatred. You have opposition factors in Egypt which are poisonous against the relationship with Israel. And they call very often for the disconnecting and abolishing of the relations between Israel and these countries. So there's a lot of sensitivity, and we have to all balance these sensitivities with the reality. Now, of course, Jordan is not perfect. There are many things that we would like of Jordan, including the issue of the harboring of a terrorist like that. There are other issues with Jordan, inspiring more warm peace towards Israel, inspiring other countries to join the peace process. There are a lot of things that Jordan can do, and we ask Jordan to do. But we're also aware of the sensitivities of Jordan. You know, in relations between countries, a country doesn't always do what you request. Doesn't. Even with the United States, Israel has requests, and the United States can say yes, can say no. Now, that's a relations between countries. So you raise your requests, and not all of them are satisfied. We accept that that's the realpolitik of reality today.
Thank you very much for that great final question. And we are going to call it an evening. I deeply, deeply appreciate the participation of our Consul General. Thank you, Consul General Dr. Hillel Newman, for being a part of our community's evening and sharing with us most up-to-date information as it relates to Israel's peace, security, and future. Please put your hands together for a warm thank you to Dr. Hillel Newman, our Consul General, for a wonderful, wonderful presentation. Thank you all so very much for joining us. For those of you who would like to continue the conversation, open up your mics, make yourself comfortable, chat as much as you'd like. I'm going to be around for about another 5-10 minutes, and then I'm going to get going. But we're going to leave this conversation to continue on. I do want to thank Kameya for helping with this event. I do want to thank Burl Weiner for helping with this event. Your support and care for Jewish life, and is particularly support for Israel and our community, is integral. It's vital, and we deeply appreciate it. And thank you to each and every one of you for being here with us. Laila Tov to those of you who are bouncing. For those of you who are sticking around, open up your mics. We'd love to continue the
Laila
conversation.
Tov.
Thank you.
Thank
Toda
you.
Rabba.
Thank you very much. Anyone have any comments that they'd like to share based on this discussion that you'd like to continue discussing? We'd love to hear your comments.
Rabbi, I agree with Hillel. What amazing foresight, prophecy you had with this today. Amazing.
The timing was very good. Thank you for that comment. I wouldn't call it prophecy, but I would certainly call it good divine providence, as we like to say.
Better to be lucky.
Yes. Okay. Anyone else have any other comments that they'd like to share? Any comments?
Thank you for the opportunity. I think things are a little bit more, let's say, challenging than he actually described it in terms of what's happening on the street in Israel. There's no question it's a wonderful success that he's had today, but the situation, from what I hear weekly from friends in Israel, is really a little bit more strident and a little bit more concerning. But given our own situation here in the United States, they're in better shape than we are, although they're protesting on the streets and demonstrating quite a bit. I think it was generally forthcoming, but that was an issue where I think it was hard for him to speak more perhaps openly or realistically on the issue.
Israel is such a vibrant democracy, and there's so many different opinions and strong opinions that exist in Israel. But at the same time, you see election after election, we don't have to imagine what Israel would do. We've seen it unfortunately, in the last 18 months, we've seen 3 elections. And each and every time, in spite of the fact that there's a lot of vocal opposition to Netanyahu, and regardless of my thoughts about him, the electorate seems to overwhelmingly vote together with him, or the parties that are aligned with him. So that's, nothing has changed since the last election and today. If anything, it's become better in his favor over the last election. That's my own personal opinion as it relates to just reading the news and keeping up to date. I stay very up to date on all things Israel. And it seems like you may want to speak to a broader coalition of people in Israel to get some more opinions. I would suggest Times of Israel. It's a great.
That's one of many sources, but what I'm hearing are really a very not good things from people who, of course, support many of the things that he's led over the years. But the talk on the street is that there's so much discontent and disappointment with the legalities and his evasion of the law, and the people who've worked for him for years who now speak up against him in terms of the criminal act and other kinds of things. Anyway, we have a celebratory day because of the good things that have happened today, and I'm certainly delighted that he shared that and he was part of it. That's a wonderful thing.
I think that my name is Noam. Hi. I think that
Noam, you're only allowed to talk if you can show us your beautiful face.
I don't have the camera. I'm trying to fix my camera. I'm sorry.
Noam. Excuses. Typical Israeli response. We love you, brother.
I'm trying to fix a camera here, the drivers or something. But about Netanyahu, I think really he's a great leader, but he's really a bad person. This is what I think. So it's a conflict, really.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That's all. Yeah.
But thank you for the
comment. Anyone else want to comment on the discussion that we had or anything that we've been discussing? Kai, see.
As the Consulate General said, the the situation. I mean, Israel is such an incredible democracy within hundreds and hundreds of miles. It's the only place in that entire area where there can be demonstrations on the street. I mean, it wouldn't happen in any other neighboring country, aside from which the situation there, it sounds in a way similar to our situation. I mentioned earlier that we talk about 2 Jews and 3 opinions. But a great deal of that is because you scratch under the surface, we're really united. And the arguing is because it's the same way that siblings argue with each other. We're all in reality one. And with the siblings, there are bound to be, there's bound to be differences of opinion. But when push comes to shove, I think we're really united.
Like he said, on the core issues, he said, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think that's a perfect assessment. On the core issues, Netanyahu and Gantz are certainly aligned.
Yeah, I would agree, yeah. Thank you very much for the opportunity to chat.
Thank you, Rhoda. Always great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. This is 2 in a row. We hope to see you again soon.
I hope so. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Great program. Sorry you weren't there when I was in Jackson.
Let's see in a moment if I can fix my camera. Still working on it.
No one, we would love to see your beautiful face.
By the way, Rabbi, if you can contact me in person later on. Okay?
Bezrat Hashem.
Okay.
Shabbat shalom. Toda rabba.
Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom.
Hello, Laila Tov.
לילה טוב לכולם. ביי.
Any other comments before we close out?
Once upon a time, I used to be identified as you were identified as my son, and now I'm very proud to be identified as your father. Father of Rabbi Mendelssohn. It's
And I call you the real Rabbi Mendelssohn. Kamea, did you want to?
He's your father?
Laura, no need to just shout out Toda Rabbah and Laila.
Sorry.
Please try to keep it quiet if you can. Thank you. Kamea,
Yes.
did you have something you wanted to say?
No, I just, the relationship between, it's getting to me right now between you and your father. So I'm just gonna log off right now. The love is amazing. And thank you for mentioning my father tonight. I appreciate it. And I'll see you on Shabbat. Thank you.
Looking forward to that, Kamea.
Kamea, God Almighty should comfort you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Any final comments before we call it a night?
Good night.
Have a wonderful night, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care. Continue to spread the love for Israel. We love you all. Have a good night.
Good night.